Emperor, we come for you! We come for you!
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Long live the fighters!
And there it is. We're back.
We are back.
We are back. Hello and welcome to season 4, episode 7, number 45 of the Fusion Underground.
Good God.
I know. 45.
We haven't been kicked off yet.
Yet. The operative word being yet.
Dum, dum, dum.
Here at the Fusion Underground, what we try to do is we try to make sense of the world by having principled discussions about such topics as entertainment, current events, politics, and culture. Our mission is to educate people to become critical thinkers so they can live more empowered and happier lives. As always, I'm your host, Manuel Ramirez, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by the man, the myth, the legend, my brother, Jason Moret. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm good, brother.
You have no comment about my beer.
Hazy?
It's called Hazy. It's an IPA by Four Peaks Brewing Company.
Nice.
There wasn't really a big selection at Fry's. So this is the first beer that I have had. I can't tell you how long.
Yeah? And you went with an IPA, huh?
Like 4 or 5 years. Well...
I haven't had a beer in 4 or 5 years, and you got an IPA? Okay.
No, I purchased this. So I just got like a 3, because they have like singles, like little single. You can at Fry's you can get just like a little 6-pack, and you can just put some single beers in there, and they have a whole fridge right there. And I just picked a couple, and I picked them the same way that I pick my wine. I sucker for marketing, and I wasn't really that impressed with the label. Yeah,
you're a walking oxymoron.
I know. But this was probably the most eye-catching, probably one of about 4 eye-catching labels that was different. So I'm like, I haven't had that before. I didn't even notice that it said IPA on it when I bought it, in my defense. Seriously, I'm serious. I'm honest. But I haven't had a beer in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I've been drinking wine for so long.
I'm so sorry.
And I
haven't had a beer in 4 or 5 days. I was actually just thinking about that one.
But
speaking of which,
I bought these a week ago. I bought them a week ago.
And a week ago, and it's empty.
I bought 3 beers a week ago, and this is the first one that I've had. And when I cracked it open and I took a drink, I thought, it tastes like flowers. It does. It tastes like flowers and sunshine.
That's exactly what I look for in a beer. So I'm gonna run right out and grab that.
It's not bad. It's fine. It's good. It's Four Peaks Brewing Company.
I like Four Peaks. I really do like Four Peaks. They're good.
Peaks. They're a local brewery here in Arizona.
Yep.
I recommend them.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I enjoy their brews. I don't care for IPA. I never have. I like a good Hefeweizen. I like a Franziskaner is very good. I like a lager. I like,
I like those too.
Yeah,
I like those too. But what's funny is I opened it, and I was so used to drinking wine that the very first thing I did,
you smelled it. Did you take a drink and swish and spit?
No, I just smelled it and I
You
was like,
idiot.
beer never smells good. Like it just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't smell good. It's like,
I'm not talking to you anymore. And it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because I never did understand who actually goes into a supermarket and hand selects single beers to fill up into their little 6-pack. That would be a you guy, because if I don't need two hands carrying out my beer, then I didn't get the right selection. I just didn't do it. No, 24-pack or bigger. That's
you
how I
realize we're
shop.
like night and day, right? You and
Yes.
I like night and day,
Yes.
yin and yang, the
That's
whole
why
nine
this
yards.
works.
You're buying a case of beer. I'm buying three beers that took me I bought three beers that took me probably 15 minutes to select the three because
It would take me 15 minutes to go through 3 beers.
That's funny.
God, now you make me sound like a raging alcoholic.
All right.
I'm the one drinking a Diet Coke, for crying out loud.
Well, because you drank your beer. It's empty. You already showed us the
I'm
empty
out of
box.
beer. Yeah.
Well, what are we talking about tonight?
You wanted to talk about discipline.
Yeah, we're going to talk about temperance.
Temperance. I can't use the word discipline without sounding like Cartman from that South Park episode. You racket the discipline. So I think it's better we use the term temperance.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! It's a weird night. It
It's
feels
a very weird night.
It feels weird. It just does. Maybe it's the beer.
I think it's probably that's very weird for me to see you drinking a beer.
Yeah, it's weird for me.
Well, and it's Monday night, so
that's true.
That's a big part of it.
That's true. We didn't record last night on Sunday, our normal night, because it was Valentine's Day, aka Statehood Day.
Statehood Day?
Yes.
Oh.
You uneducated swine.
I am. I'm sorry. Jeez Louise.
February 14th was the day that's Arizona
right.
became a state.
Became a state. I apologize. Sorry. I actually forget February 14th exists because February 13th is all that usually is in my brain or matters for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
that's
my anniversary. Yep.
Yeah. By the way,
that I thought that was a real genius idea when I was younger, and that was a really stupid idea as I realize it now.
Because it makes it 2 days worth of celebrating instead of one.
And not only that, I mean, I can go get my wife, a dozen roses. Speaking of fries, I can get a dozen roses there for $10. Every other time of the year. $10 a dozen roses. You want a dozen roses in here or around? Yeah, you're at least $30 in.
Right. Well, supply and demand. Demand goes up.
I know. So. Love capitalism, but that's stupid. Anybody out there in the sound of my voice, do not do it. Stay away from Valentine's Day for an anniversary. Yeah. Trust me, it's worth it.
So let's talk about temperance.
Okay, temperance.
What got me thinking about this is I had a couple of conversations over the weekend with some friends of mine and talking about just human behavior, I guess. One particular conversation was about men's behavior, what some might refer to as toxic masculinity.
Okay.
We've talked about masculinity quite a bit on this show.
A little bit. Mm-hmm.
I like to think that our show is actually for other men, although we don't say that in our opening in the opening intro.
I like to think that our show offers an opportunity for perspective from a place of mutual understanding, which as to we'll say middle-aged, unfortunately, whether we like to admit it or not, men, I think middle-aged men are probably more likely to seek similar like-minded perspective from that place. I'm not
I
going to say that we are geared towards men.
no. I think we have to have. I think our society needs more masculinity, not less, but it needs a healthy masculinity.
I think a better understanding of what masculinity is instead of understanding what masculinity is labeled as.
True. That's a good point because typically any behavior that a man exhibits gets labeled as masculinity. And so it's the it's the chauvinistic type of behavior, or the angry, the rage induced guy that tends to get labeled as masculinity, and that's not what masculinity is.
No. Agreed.
But it got me to thinking about just self-discipline. I'm not talking about disciplining others. And I really don't want to talk about disciplining other people because there's only certain situations in which we can discipline other people. And that's what we have to define that first. When is it acceptable to discipline somebody else, particularly if you're talking about adults, disciplining other adults? And those are conversations that I don't really find them interesting. I'm more interested in the self-discipline for self-improvement.
Okay. Self-governance and temperance, I think, are
Yeah.
where we need to stay focused then.
Yeah, because, part of this ties into something that I was reading today. So I'm reading another book.
Really?
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through, which means I'll finish in a day or two here.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Probably tomorrow. Maybe while I'm sitting having coffee. Yeah, but in that particular book, it's really sort of, the book is trying to deconstruct society post World War II.
Okay.
And the author makes an argument that when we talk about things that have been just standard in our society for a long time, like masculine roles. I'm not talking jobs, I'm talking roles. So masculine roles versus feminine roles. Even roles for young versus middle-aged versus elderly. Everybody's got different roles to play at different points in their life. And one of the arguments that they make is that there's nothing wrong with those roles, because those roles stabilize our society. They make the society predictable, but they also align to, millions of years of evolution that has been taking place in our DNA and in our brains. I mean, there's a reason why these roles exist. They exist not because our society has said that men have to perform one role versus women have to perform another role. Those roles exist because, well, we're creatures of nature, and as animals within the animal kingdom, we have evolved into the roles that we have within that animal kingdom. And the reason why I bring that up is because there are a lot of people that say, well, why can't a 9-year-old boy dress up as a drag queen and have grown men throw dollars at him? What's wrong with that? Why is that bad? If they're not doing anything illegal, we can have a whole we can have a debate on, is it legal or not? But this is something that has happened. This is something that's happened within the last couple of years, where you had a little boy who professes to be transgender, dresses up, is a drag queen and participates in these drag queen competitions and whatnot, and goes out there and shakes his moneymaker, and men, predominantly gay men, from what I understand, based on the places where he does these things, where this young boy performs, there are a lot of men who throw dollar bills at him, that give him money, that he's basically stripping in essence. I know it's not the same thing, right? I know I'm not trying to equate what he's doing with what, happens at a strip club, not necessarily, but there are people that say, well, what's wrong with that? If that's something he wants to do, and if he's not getting hurt in the process physically, and what's the harm? Why shouldn't that be acceptable? Or in other situations where you have, um, high schools today have a predominantly high number of students who uh, who who have embraced this transgenderism, gender fluidity, whatever, um, and that's abnormal. That's just simply that's abnormal. I think a lot of it has to do with a cry for help, but our our school environments have normalized this type of behavior. And I understand that high school is a very trying place. I know people are trying to figure out who they are. Um, and when you mix that in with our current society, where if you're a victim, you can achieve power or certain types of privilege, we're going to be surprised when a predominant, um, or I should say a sizable amount of students in the I'm talking some schools have as many as 25% of their school population have now come out saying that they're transgender in some way. So you have a mix of boys and girls that are doing this. We're normalizing this behavior for them to get privilege. They don't suffer gender dysphoria. I have a hard time believing that these students suffer from gender dysphoria, which is an actual psychological issue. I think this is more to do with attention, and I'm watching you as I speak about all this. I talk about this, and you're just like, you're flabbergasted. So let me just pause there. I know I've been talking for a little bit. I'm curious as your thoughts, but because I'm going somewhere with this, with the whole temperance idea and this normalization of being counterculture for the sake of privilege. But go ahead. What are you thinking? I'm curious.
I I don't know if I can formulate my disbelief into articulate thought at the moment, but I'll try. Um, when we normalize behavior like this, we actually do damage to the development of our young, the development of our youth, essentially. When you are going through puberty, when you are going through adolescence, there is a great deal of personal self-discovery which happens. And there's a lot of self-doubt that happens in that process. And any adult out there, if you remember, there was a lot of things you weren't sure about, what you liked, who you liked. Um, I don't think the vast majority of people questioned their attraction to, one sex or the other. But why you were attracted to, you know, certain things or certain people, those things naturally happen. You start questioning whether that's right, that's wrong, or what your preferences really are, or should you experiment with other things in other places. And I'm not talking about just or not necessarily talking about a sexual nature. I'm talking about all types of experiences. I mean, that's part of that natural discovery of who you are. You and I had a discussion about this briefly the other day. The first third of your life is actually trying to discover who you are as a person and formulate that. And in adolescence, there is so many changes happening on a metaphysical level with the human body that your mind is racing to try and keep up with all of those changes and quantify and compartmentalize all those individual parts of yourself. And so when you're trying to sort through all that, there is natural doubt, there's natural confusion that you as an individual have to work through. It's part of your development.
Sure.
And
Sure.
if you suck, or if you add to that with an idea that any sense of doubt is actually not only okay, but you should be encouraged in that, it actually, instead of stabilizing your life, you cause any sense of stability in there to fluctuate. And so now you're adding additional confusion to, honestly, a part of your life. As we as human beings, we're naturally confused about a lot of stuff. And so it just opens up this whole other world of what the heck am I supposed to do? So you have people who have absolutely zero direction and nobody to help guide them, because we're saying anything you feel is right. Don't be discouraged. Well, that's, you want to encourage people to explore, but have a basis of fundamental right and wrong. That's essentially like saying, if you feel like you suddenly have the urge to murder your neighbor, well, try that. See if that's something you want to be in life. Don't be discouraged. No, you say, okay, whoa, stop, child. Me, adult, this is me telling you there's a boundary line of your conduct that you do not pass. You had a momentary thought. Okay, let's explore that. Why did that happen? When you talk to someone, when you get, especially in adolescence where hormones are raging, emotions are firing, your synapses are firing like crazy. You can't keep up with all that. We've seen the outraged teenager that goes from 0 to 60 to, throwing a fit, storming out, blowing up over nothing. That's an expression of not only the hormones taking over, but also it's an exaggeration of just anger and confusion and usually frustration. So as an adult, we go, okay, I understand that you're upset. Let's talk about why. And you go back to the root of why you're upset. Well, now this is the way you want to handle it. We're molding adolescents into how to become productive members of society as adults without giving them that basis and that boundary line of conduct. We're basically saying it's okay for you to blow your top and get in your car and scream out of the parking lot and go off. That's fine, just because you were upset because a conversation didn't go your way with your bestie. No, that's not okay. So to me, all of this gender confusion, there needs to be some sort of boundary lines that these, and our youth are actually wanting that. The idea of needing some sense of structure and stability in our lives, we talk about that with very young children as they develop. That doesn't go away. The need for that stays throughout our lives. Right now, as adults, if you and I lose structure and stability in our lives, we lose our job, lose our house, oh my gosh, our whole world is turned upside down. That happens. We need that as human beings. So to put them in a situation where they are already going through chaos, and then to add an acceptance of additional chaos onto that, it's absolutely disruptive to the development that is imperative, especially during adolescence.
Well, and we see that, we see problems, I think, in masculinity, especially with young boys, because they're going through, let's face it, all of us who have been through high school, we know that going through high school is a difficult time. There's a difficult time in trying to understand who you are coming into as your own person. You're thrust into this environment where you have a lot of other people, and there are, there's popularity contests, there's all kinds of different sort of social jockeying for position. Um, but at the same time, adults are expecting that you act as an adult, but of course you're not permitted to completely act as an adult. So I get that it's a very difficult time. It's a very difficult time integrating and trying to find your place within the community. Um, coupled that with by the time young people are getting into high school, that's usually when they start learning more about the truth of whatever their family life is like. And let's face it, I don't think anybody, I think very few people would say that they have a perfect family life. Parents fighting, maybe parents divorced, or finding out that their mom is really their sister, or grandmother was really their mother, or weird things like that, right?
What?
I mean, I know I'm going off on a limb.
Wow,
But
I was
what
like, whoa.
my point being is, once you get into your teenage years, that's usually when the veil comes over your eyes about who your parents are, what they're like, that you start realizing that, oh, my parents are actual people. They're not these mythical figures that I knew when I was 5. There's a transformation that happens. You start
Right.
seeing your family, you start understanding the truths around your family. Your family, a lot of people keep things from their children in order to protect them.
Mhm.
Maybe they have an uncle who was arrested and spent time in prison, but we don't tell little Jimmy that. But once Jimmy becomes 16, 17-year-old Jimmy, well, now we can kind of tell him, because now he's old enough to know.
Right.
Right. So
Yep.
that's what I'm talking about, is the veil of even your own family starts to be lifted from your eyes. And so now it's like a lot of your world, the truths of your world start to be challenged as you start learning more about them, particularly with a more or a more mature mindset, a brain. Your brain is continuing to grow and to adapt in its skull, and now you think differently at 16 than you did at 8. Right? You
Right.
think differently, you see the world a little bit differently. Your mind still isn't, your brain still hasn't completely formed, it's still in the forming stage, but a lot of those more adult like thoughts are starting to form, and so you're able to comprehend things differently. And so it's a very difficult time, and we've talked about the lack of initiation rites. We don't take young boys and rip them away from their mothers like the tribes used to do, and say, you're going to go through the initiation and you're going to become a member of the tribe as a man. Now you're now a man, and now there are man expectations of you going forward. We don't do that in our society. So it's very difficult for young people to really find out, well, am I adult or am I not? Am I a little kid still? Everybody still kind of treats me like a little kid, but they expect me to be an adult, but they don't let me do anything. Like, I get it, right? I think a lot of this sort of like just, it impacts a young mind, and they kind of go crazy. They don't know how to behave.
Mhm. Mhm.
Worse yet is, these kids are now maturing physically in their physiology, and they're coming into manhood or womanhood, and if they don't have anybody to guide them through that process, then it can be fraught with even more angst and
Sure.
confusion and everything. And now we have teachers who say, well, it doesn't matter as long as you live your truth, right? One of the, I hate that. As long as you live your truth. And so they're normalizing craziness, and kids are able to think, well, why can't I be crazy?
Yeah.
This is
It's my truth.
it's my truth.
And who are you to tell me I can't live my truth?
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
what are we doing to these people? What are we doing to these young humans, right, that are getting ready to go out into the world and have a rude awakening? What are we doing for their own psychological and emotional development? Listen to this. Listen to this clip. It's about a minute in length, but I want you to hear her.
You're going to upset me, aren't you?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. I want you to listen to what she says, because most of what she says, I don't understand a damn thing she's saying. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but listen to this.
I'm Cody, pronouns em, ers, or zem, zers, or really any neo pronouns that aren't z, her, hers. This is my first foray into TikTok. I come from the world of Instagram, where I had decided at one point that I was going to microvlog my gender transition, which might be the most pretentious thing I have ever said or tried to do. But I really just want to introduce myself and open myself up for questions. So again, hi, I'm Cody. I am a white transmasculine femme non-binary, temporarily mostly able-bodied, neurodivergent, obsessive-compulsive, chronically ill, culturally Jewish, Unitarian Universalist, non-monogamous, demi-low romantic, gray demi-bisexual, survivor of acute and complex trauma, millennial, and cat parent in mental health recovery. My identities are fluid and ever-changing and don't like boundaries. and I just want to open there.
What?
Yeah.
Inappropriate daughter speak. What the French toast? I what?
So
I think she called herself a cat parent.
yeah.
Some
Yeah.
sort of mental trauma, which I can understand just by listening to that, and also some sort of behavioral health recovery specialist. My
Yeah.
honey, you couldn't recover from a bad trip and fall.
So she's clearly a female. The voice is clearly a
Yeah,
female, and there's a
yeah.
video of her. I didn't share the video. I suppose I could, but I didn't share the video. And she's clearly presenting as a young woman, but she's trying to be a
I don't
boy.
know
But
what she's trying to be.
she's trying to. Well, I don't know. She said transmasculine. I think she when at the
Well,
beginning
but she said her labels do not like boundaries, as
right
if they're
right.
living entities themselves.
But
The
she
labels themselves actually have consciousness.
my labels don't like boundaries, but I'm full of labels and boundaries.
Yes.
So
Matter of
her
fact, I've got so many
yeah.
labels that makes me boundary less. No, or
I
I
don't
think,
understand.
or I don't. Yeah. If you
So
judge me, you're a bad person.
her pronouns, the pronouns that she wants, airs. So just /em/eir/eirs.
So, how do you actually use those?
So if I were talking about you, I would say
Uh-huh.
he drank all of his beer. In this situation, I would say E drank all of air beers.
That sounds very German.
Right. Nobody can use these. That's
You
the
can't, well,
problem
and
with
you
these
can't keep
things.
up with all of it.
I can't use these. There's no way that I'm going to slip in an EIR, which is just the last part of the word there. THEIR. It's the last part of it. It's the last part of there. I'm not going to try to, it's a made up word. The other pronouns that she has are Z, Zem, Zer, or Zers.
We've
So
gone
Z,
so either it's German or Zulu from outer space. It's like Mork and Mindy type stuff.
right. And then she says, or really any neo pronouns that aren't Z, her, hers. It sounds like the normal feminine her, hers when she says that at the end, but it's not HER or HERS, it's HIR, HIRS. No, this is just,
It's asinine. It's asinine, borderline retarded behavior.
and I, the sad thing is all I kept thinking about while I'm watching this. So I've got her other labels here. She's white, transmasculine. Again, transmasculine right there. She's admitting that she was born female. So she's white, transmasculine, non-binary, mostly able-bodied. I don't understand what mostly is.
She has a limp.
Bad back.
Yeah. I'm mostly able-bodied at this point in my life.
Needs a new knee.
Yeah. I could use a TKA here.
Well, actually, it says she's temporarily mostly able-bodied. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean.
Pre-op.
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent.
She thinks differently. She likes to think different. She likes to think that she thinks differently than other people. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I think she does. I can agree with this. Yes.
Obsessive compulsive.
Agreed.
Chronically ill.
Agreed.
Culturally Jewish. I can't help you there.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Culturally Jewish.
Does that mean she's like, is that like saying I'm a non-practicing Catholic or something?
No,
like that?
I think that's Jewish by marriage.
Not by
No?
upbringing? I don't know. I don't know.
That's all I can think. She's
I-
practicing Jewish, but not by blood.
No, I don't think it has. I think it's like the, non-practicing Christian. I think she's raised in a Jewish family that might celebrate
Oh, that could
Jewish
be.
holidays, but just they don't go to temple
Yeah, I don't
or
actually do
synagogue or
anything,
whatever it is. Right, right.
but I still do my Hanukkah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
kibitzes and stuff like that. Whatever. I
yep,
don't know.
and yarmulkes and stuff.
Yeah, Unitarian Universalist. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I think that's a type of religion, actually.
Okay,
Non-monogamous. Like,
she's
why would you
she
put
get
that? Why
she
would
gets
you?
around.
Why would you accept that as a label? Like, I don't understand the propensity to define yourself based on who you have sex with.
You wait. That's the part throwing you off about this whole thing.
No,
You're going
just
through all
just
of these labels, and
just
you're
one
going,
of them.
"Why did she pick this label? I don't understand why people pick this label."
Well, I don't understand the next two, because she says demi-low romantic.
Demi-low.
Demi-low romantic. All one word. DEMILOWROMANTIC. Demi-low romantic. Or there, and plus the other label, gray demi-bisexual. What is that?
Dude, I don't know.
So
You're talking to a guy who still believes, regardless, contrary to all this crap, that there are two genders and that's it.
how can there be, but these people profess that there is no such thing as two genders, but then they claim to be bisexual.
Yeah, I know, but they're dumb.
But bi, the prefix bi means two,
Means dos.
right?
Or in German, since we're using the er and z's and the ers, it's zwei.
Gray demi-bis. While I was watching this little video,
Uh-huh.
the only thing I kept thinking of was, what happened to this child when she was being raised during her childhood? What was her childhood like?
I don't know if I can actually agree that that's part of the issue anymore.
Why not?
There was a time where I used to say, where the hell are these kids' parents? But honestly, our societal influence, and I do blame our schools heavily for this crap. I see so much of this coming out of our collegiate institutions, which filters down. I'm sorry to say, but it does filter down into our high schools, middle schools, junior highs, and elementary school even, where this is actually acceptable discussion and acceptable practice. There's a lot of parents out there going, what the hell is wrong with the schools, and why don't I have any other option?
Look
for
at
my
this.
child?
Look at this one. I want to show you this video. Can you see this? What I'm
Oh
sharing
God,
now?
yeah, I can see it.
Okay. I want to show you this other one because this was a little odd as well. Here it is.
The obesity epidemic isn't real, and it shouldn't be an anti-capitalist talking point. When someone unironically references the obesity epidemic or even uses the word obesity, it tells me they really don't know what they're talking about when it comes to fatness. This use of the word obesity stems directly from the BMI, which was created by a eugenicist with no medical training who based the scale only on white bodies and cow math.
I had to pause there for a minute because I really want to know what cow math is. Like,
oh, good God.
Your face was frozen, and for a minute I thought, "Oh my God, I lost him."
Scream? No, I was frozen. I had cognitive dissonance actually take over my physical abilities.
What is cow math? Now here's the thing.
Well, no, I love that she contrasted the word obesity to fatness.
Props for that, by the way.
That was awesome.
Props for that. That's pretty pro right there.
Right?
Fatness. I loved it. I loved that part.
Fatness is appropriate. Cow math is not.
Here's the thing. I'm not playing these videos for people to make fun of these two individuals.
No.
I'm really seriously concerned about them.
Well, I am, but I'm not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I can't help it. I can't help but think that these are two people who desperately need something. They need somebody to care about them.
Agreed.
And I
would
don't
agree
think
with that.
I don't believe that they have anybody who cares about them as an individual, like truly care for them. And
You kn-
that bothers me. Maybe I shouldn't be bothered by it, but I am. But let me
No, no, no. Hold on. No,
I
no, no,
don't
no,
know
no,
what
no, no.
cow math is.
I've got to stop you on that.
Okay.
Sorry. I do believe that these people have other individuals in this world who do care for them as individuals greatly. I believe that we as a society have forced an idea upon each of them that without a cause, they don't matter. They must take up a cause for their voice to be heard by the masses. And we
I
keep giving them platforms to try and do that.
do you really think that somebody cares for them? I mean, I've watched those things. I've watched those documentaries about people who are they're 800 pounds or whatever, right? They're 500 pounds. Um, and every single one of those people, they're so obese, they're so morbidly obese that some of them can no longer get out of their bed. They've never been out of their house in like 5 years. Um, and they do have somebody who cares for them. They have somebody who goes to the store, buys food, comes home, cooks it, and feeds it to them. And while we would say, yes, somebody cares for them, those people are actively contributing to those individuals' death and destruction. And I wonder if these two ladies have similar situations where they have somebody who cares for them, but they have somebody who's not helping them through whatever they're going through.
Now, that is a statement I can absolutely agree with. I can absolutely agree with that. And I talked to you before about my acceptance of who I am as an individual, and that I appreciate that I am honest with people upfront and all the time, and I tell them exactly how I feel. And I understand that 90% of the time that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I'm going to use this gal that you're showing right here as an example. If I was somebody that truly cared for this person, I would be out of love. I would say, dear, you can call it obesity, you can call it fatness or whatever, but you need physical training. We need to get your diet in shape, and we need to
Right.
get your body in shape before your habits overtake you as a person and put you in mortal danger.
Yeah.
And this poison that you're putting in your head to justify what's going on with you is not helping you. It's contributing to your inevitable mortality.
Let me finish playing her video here, and I won't stop it at cow math, although I really, really want to know what cow math is. But here's the rest of the video.
This use of the word obesity stems directly from the BMI, which was created by a eugenicist with no medical training who based the scale only on white bodies and cow math. Fatness is not an epidemic. Fat people existed before capitalism and before colonization. Fat phobia is a direct result of anti-blackness, and it has deadly consequences for many groups of indigenous folks and other people of color, as well as fat folks. When you make the obesity epidemic a real symptom of capitalism, you are not only ostracizing fat people from anti-capitalist thinking, but also actively ignoring that the health outcomes related to obesity are more accurately attributed to food deserts and fatphobic discrimination in healthcare. The obesity epidemic was created by Western medicine to avoid addressing the actual causes of health inequity, which is what we as anti-capitalists should be doing.
She's going to die of diabetes and heart disease.
In a food desert. What the heck is that? What?
You've never heard of the term a food desert?
No. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That came out a few years back.
I thought she pronounced it wrong. I thought she meant
No.
dessert. And I was like, okay, I didn't get lost in a dessert. I can see that.
No, a food desert are these new finagled things that exist in inner cities where you have people living in the inner city and there is no grocery store for 5 or 6 miles. And if they don't have a vehicle, they can't get to the grocery store to buy good food. So then they are relegated to buying Jack in the Box and McDonald's or whatever is within walking distance of their homes. So that would be a place in the inner city with no grocery store would be considered a food desert.
Oh,
Oh,
I guess that's because I don't live in a urban area where that is a potential problem.
but most cities will still have like little bodegas where it's a little corner store where you can get, you know,
Groceries.
groceries, you know, not as big as like Fry's or Albertsons or something like that, but a little
Right.
corner grocery store.
Wow.
So I mean, we could talk about these two TikTokers. Is that a thing? I don't even know if
I don't
that's a
know.
thing.
It
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
know. We could talk about these two for forever. But I want to pull this back to the topic of temperance and self-discipline.
Yes. Pull it on back, boss. I'm all ears.
And I think that I think there's a part of, I think this is an overreaction to our society and the way our society has been set up. And I think there have been people within our society, and this is totally me hypothesizing here. I have nothing to back this up. This is just my thinking about all of this. But I think that there have been years where, and I'm going to pick on men for a minute because it's easy, because I know about men because I am one.
Okay. No.
Hey, so much.
It's like, ooh, you better qualify that statement real quick.
Well, I can't speak to the you know the woman experience. I can only speak to the male experience. Shut up.
I didn't say anything.
You didn't need to.
No, I'm letting you dig your own hole here, boss.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pick on guys for a minute.
Right.
I think men. I think young men when they're in high school and college. I think they're really dumb. I think they're idiots. I think not all of them. I wouldn't
Why
say
does
100%.
that? What makes you think that stops after college?
No, well, hold on, bear with me here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
So we've got young men who are pretty much idiots, and they're at the most difficult time in their life. I'm going to be perfectly honest, because they're at their sexual height at that period of their life. And I think that there are a lot of men who make extremely bad decisions when they're between the ages of 15 to 29, 30 years old. That they make, and yeah, you're agreeing with me.
Well, yeah.
And I think a majority of people would probably say the same thing. Yeah, the vast majority of men make completely stupid decisions when they're that young. And unfortunately and sadly, there are a lot of young women who are involved in relationships with these guys, with these men, that get hurt along the way. I'm not saying every single one of them is raped, but they get hurt emotionally, psychologically. It could be physically, God forbid, but whatever. We know that does happen. Why are you looking?
I'm agreeing with you in men making dumb decisions, but I don't understand. I understand that people can get hurt along the way just because guys are dumb, but you're taking it to a relationship standpoint.
Yes, I am taking it to a
okay.
relationship standpoint, because I think men, when you're 18, 19 years of age, you don't know how to be in a relationship with anybody.
Sure.
Other than a buddy. And so when you have a 19-year-old guy who's at the height of his sexual peak, who basically wants to hump anything and everything that comes along, that's a recipe for getting into a bad relationship and hurting anybody else that you get into that sexual relationship with. Now, because of all of this, and again, I think this stems from the fact that we don't have within our society a way to bring men through this phase of maturing into manhood. And I think what we're seeing here is an overreaction to what is perceived as toxic masculinity as one piece of that. And I don't think that I don't think men are 100% to blame. I think there are a lot of things that women are to blame for as well in all of this craziness. But again, when I started this, I said, let me just pick on guys for a minute and speak to it from the male experience. So I think we've created the situation now that we're older. You and I have lived through high school years. We've lived through our early 20s. We know this. You and I both made tons of terrible decisions when we were young and stupid and naive and all of this kinds of things. And I think these two young women, I think they are an example of a society or a group of people, at least, that are sort of saying, I don't want any part of that crazy part of society, so I'm going to go do something different. But in their process of doing something different, we now have a portion of society, the people that they are surrounded by, namely like their teachers, for example, who are now saying, oh, what you're doing is okay. And so their reaction is an overreaction. Their reaction is not rooted in rational thinking or rational behavior. So they're being just as irrational as other elements of society have been. And now, but yet they're in a position where their teachers, educators, people around them are supporting them and saying and blessing it, saying, it's good that you're doing this, which is just causing that pendulum to swing vastly back and quickly back to this other side of the spectrum, which is just as crazy. So I'm going to stop there. Go.
I'm not sure I can digest everything you just said, but I'll try because that's my job. Okay, so yes, do guys make dumb decisions at between 15 and 30? Yeah. Do women make dumb decisions in the same spot? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm not down with the narrative necessarily that these women are biting back against some sort of toxic masculinity. I think, and we'll just take for example the gal who was talking about obesity being cow math. I don't believe that this is some sort of reaction to a bad relationship and she is now out like a woman scorned. I do believe that she is, to your point, surrounded by educated individuals, or at least ones that propel themselves to be such, and who are giving her very specific talking points to which she's actually gobbled up and are now regurgitating like a very good tape recorder, much like I'm sure there's a lot of people just like her doing that. And I do believe that those are more likely to come from positions of authority like teachers, counselors, community organizers, etc. Those types of individuals who actually spout this kind of stuff off, and those become regurgitated. So, and I do believe that that is, to your point, I guess, a pendulum swing of society, but I look at it more of not necessarily a masculinity, femininity swing, so much as this idea of oppression versus open acceptance to anything, and I've had this argument before.
That was exactly my point. I wasn't trying to pick on masculinity and say that they were victims of masculinity. I was trying to use that as an example that says, here's a part of society that is crazy on its own merit, crazy in and of itself. These are individuals looking at it thinking, God, that's crazy. Can I not be a part of that? But there are also other things that are just as crazy in society, and they're standing there going, well, I don't want to look at that, and I don't want to be part of that, and I don't want to be part of that, and I don't want to be part of that. So I'm going to go off and create my own thing, and they're being just as crazy.
Yes.
And yet we have people around them that are saying, you're not crazy. You're okay. You're a nice little flower. And the rest of society is looking at them saying, no, you actually are crazy. And we admit young men are crazy. Young women are crazy. A lot of areas of our society are 100% nut bags. And you cannot fight the nut bagginess of society by also becoming a nut bag yourself.
Correct. But we don't have enough Jasons being assholes and
Yes.
truthful out there
Yes.
to basically say, hey, idiots, you can't fight idiocy with more idiocy. Stop it.
Correct.
And that's been my argument against political correctness from the
Yes.
start, because it creates further degree of amicability to whatever new rules are out there. It's the same
Right.
thing with all of the gender identity BS. It's this, all of this stuff. It's all stemmed from this idea of everything is okay, when then we're going to get to a point where nothing is.
And my whole reason of trying to bring this back to the idea of temperance and self-discipline. Imagine a world, if you will, where people, young adults, as early as junior high, if they were slowly being taught the virtues of self-discipline, and they were being taught how to self-discipline, and they were practicing that, as they were maturing and developing that self-discipline, the world would look a lot different. There were founding fathers of this nation, but a lot of other types of philosophers have said that a moral foundation is extremely important for a free and functioning society. What they mean by that is not just people that are happening to walk down the street acting moral. That's pretty easy to do. All you have to do is just mind your business while you're walking down the street, and you're not going to be doing that immorally.
Essentially, don't kill each other. You're
exactly fine. but to be a moral society means that you actually do that self-reflection. You are in control. You do take the time to practice that self-discipline. But our society has completely rebelled against the idea of moral virtue. And we've done that because we just, going back to the 50s, right after World War II, we've basically said all of this concept about religion, throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But in so throwing it away, we've thrown away all of those moral foundations and those moral virtues. And we're no longer practicing that self-discipline that our religious foundation demands of us.
Right.
And so we have now created a society where you don't have to be self-disciplined. It's okay to embrace your fatness, because you're going to come up with some crazy notion that obesity is just a concept. And she kept doing this, the obesity epidemic. No, there is a bad, there comes a point where you're just fat and you are unhealthy. And if you continue, you're going to die.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we've abandoned, she's not embracing any kind of self-discipline.
No.
She just keeps eating. I mean, granted, her video is not of her eating, but you and I both know that at the end of the day, she's probably chowing down on whatever she is, saying there's no such thing as an epidemic. There's no obesity epidemic. Meanwhile, in another 3 years, she's going to be positive for diabetes.
Yeah, most likely. Well, and that's, in the meantime, instead of actually focusing her energies on that, she's talking about her anti-capitalist idea. And so you were talking about morals. And so I want to bring this back, because we have rejected religion as a country, it seems like, almost anymore, or as a society. Let's say it that way.
Society, yeah.
And so, yes, you throw out the baby with the bathwater, which all those morals that were founded in that religious foundation go out with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the family, and usually from the maternal grandmother side all the way down, starts to filter in those family morals. That's where we get some of our morals, and our values and principles are from the familial unit. Well, when that's becoming a problem, as it is now you see the attack on the family unit as well, because until all of those devices where we as a society take those moral foundations from have been completely eradicated, until that happens, then we won't have any reason to look to the overarching government to get those rules and foundations for our lives. And that's ultimately what I feel the goal of this is. But to follow your path on temperance, if we actually as an individual within the greater societal unit take the time to look at what our morals and principles and our values are. Only by doing that are you going to be able to find the boundary line of your conduct, which is what temperance looks at. How far outside of ourselves do we actually play? This is the little sandbox that we have around ourselves that we can play in and we don't go outside of. And that involves not only, attacking your neighbor because of what they're doing, acting, saying, or whatnot, but also where is the boundary line that you don't impose on someone else? And this is the part that infuriates me about some situations like this. And we'll take the first example that you play. This gal lays out 90 different labels that she wants to be known as. If that's what you want for you, fine. But you're not laying that out for you. You are laying out all of these labels and identifiers and qualifiers and pronouns and everything else for everyone else and making it their responsibility to impose and utilize those terms for you. How is anybody supposed? That is way beyond your own self. If you can actually bottle all that up and compartmentalize it for yourself and keep yourself thus circumscribed, you can actually further yourself. And you know what? More power to you. But when you make yourself just part of society's problem, that's a complete abandonment of self-responsibility. And there's the biggest, I think, key in actually trying to figure out where you fit, and that own self-discipline that you're talking about is a responsibility for your own involvement in that.
I can't even, there was a time probably not too long ago where I would have said, if you want to be all of those labels, fine, knock yourself out. I can't in good conscience be that way anymore. And I'm not advocating that stormtroopers invade her home and throw her in cuffs and take her to jail. On the contrary, I think somebody needs to have some honest conversations with these two young ladies and say, you know what, there's something not right in your head. Mm-hmm. Now, I guarantee you, though, that they're in a position where they've been coddled for so long by somebody who has told them it's okay to feel these things, that they are now in a situation where if you or I were to say, no, these are abnormal, that this is not the normal behavior of a well-adjusted young adult, and you really need to see a counselor. You really need to see somebody, because there is some underlying psychological, emotional issue that you're struggling with, and it's manifesting in craziness is what it is. It's manifesting. So I'm sort of beyond that point of just saying, well, if you want to be a low demi sexualist or whatever it was, I don't even know what she came up with. If you want to be some of these crazy things, just go ahead and be that. If I had a family member that wants to do that, my response has to be, you're not normal. That there's a concern here. And you have to do that in a way where you have to, the other person has to at least understand, look, I still care about you.
Yeah.
I still love you, but there's something not right with the way that you're acting. That's not normal behavior.
If that was my sister, cousin, aunt, I don't care, friend, and she told me that she was all of that, I would say, so you're just a promiscuous lady. What are you seeking? It sounds like you are seeking some sort of personal gratification, and you have a psychological or emotional void in your life. Have you talked to somebody about that? You should.
Well, I think that first woman, I think that first young lady, I think she's looking for validation. Why else do you go on the internet, make a video of yourself saying all of the things that she did, unless you're asking for the validation of strangers?
Right. Well, she's obviously she's seeking the validation of strangers. She's openly admitting she's pretty much open to having intercourse with anything or anyone.
Right. And she said that she's open for questions.
Well, she said she's open for questions, but she said she was not gay but bisexual and not what was the not non-monogamous. So
Non-monogamous. Yeah.
I mean, she's pretty much open to whatever. I'm like, you are looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
So talk to a counselor.
But you know that there is evidence that shows that there are very specific masculine and feminine roles in human beings, and especially when we look at societies that have much more leisure time, and when they're not only high leisure times but also societies that are high in equality. So the more equality that there is in the sexes, there are societies, particularly in Western Europe, where the populations have reverted to more um, masculine and feminine role types for men and women. So
The traditional gender role
the traditional gender
identifiers.
roles. So in countries where equality between the sexes is at an all-time high, and where there's very little difference in anything in terms in public life in between men and women, that and there's high levels of leisure, meaning, I mean, this is the utopian outlook that a lot of leftists and postmodernists strive for. They feel like, well, if we had more leisure and we had more equality, then women would be free to do whatever they want to do. They'd be free to create a rocket ship like Elon Musk and launch a car into space if they so wanted to. They'll shoot for the stars, and men, they'll shoot for all of those. They'll become ballerinas and all this kind of, right, and all this gender bending would occur.
Right.
And what we find in these societies is the exact opposite. The women, they have high leisure, high equality, and what do they want? They want to have children and be stay at home and take care of their families.
Right.
And the men and the men, they want to do more masculine type of roles, like take care of their families, work hard, not be ballerinas,
Right.
but
They take on the
actually
provider archetype.
they take on the provider archetype. And so that's very compelling, because what that says is that even when you have the freedom to be anything you want to be, that the human animal still says, you know what, I find solace in being the thing that I was built to be. And I think some of these women, maybe not necessarily these two, but maybe these two, are fearing, maybe they feel a draw there and they fear it. And so their fear is to completely do a 180 and try to get away from that as much as possible, because if they don't, they'll somehow lose their feminist card.
Yep. Well, and their feminist card there, well, I'll just call it an activist card.
Sure, their activist card. That's probably a
Because
better way of saying it. Yeah.
without a cause, what do they have?
Right.
And this is something I've said for a lot of people who are out fighting for whatever cause. And God love you, if you have a cause that you believe in, fight for it. Absolutely. What is your life without it? And that's, I'm not trying to take away from whatever cause has you out there, or take away from your argument, but what is your life without it? Because if you don't have a if you don't have a fulfilling life without it, I'm trying to think. Okay, I'm gonna quote a movie just because movie quotes everybody gets. There was cheesy movie, Cool Runnings. You remember when John Candy's
yeah.
talking about, Dimitri asked him, you had gold medals, you had it all, and he says, a gold medal is a wonderful thing, but if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. And for a lot of these people out there, the activists as a whole, without their cause, they have no purpose and meaning and fulfillment in their life. And that's why no matter what happens, you were just talking about this equality idea over in Western or Eastern Europe, excuse me, where this should be very compelling. It should, but it's not. Because if that actually made sense to people out there marching in the streets for these causes, they would say, well, if that's the case, then no, then I need to revisit this and course correct. But the reality is that without that, they have to actually look inside and see what's causing them to actually be so pissed off that the only thing they have is to march regurgitating the talking points that they've been fed up to this point. And that causes a lot of personal pain to actually internalize, look at that. Did I really just gobble this up without thinking about it? And do I need to course correct, or do I just double down? That's easy. Nope, you're just a denier. I'm going to go on and I'll call you a couple names along the way, and I'm going to march and shout louder. And that's what inevitably happens.
So how does all this tie back to temperance?
Well, I think all right, so what I was just talking about, if you actually believe in something, let's take we're not going to talk about it's not obesity, it's fatness, and it's based on cow math. All right. Well, if you really believe that and you do want to correct that, then take what you have, investigate it, and then try and raise awareness around it, but understand who you are within it and how can you effectively change it. And that's where I say, all right, for all these people out here on TikTok and Twitter and all, you're just virtue signaling. You're just out there yelling and screaming. You're not actually changing anything. So what are you trying to accomplish? Because if you're actually really trying to address the problem, then you're not actually doing that with what you're doing. Show me that this actually is something worth looking at and actionable. Take that internal and fix it within yourself. Become an example. Take ownership within your own life, and then move to educate the people around you and build up from that. At least that's my thought.
The thing that I think that my mind keeps going back to are the people that say that they're not religious, they're spiritual,
Okay.
which for me is just it's an excuse to do anything that they want to be able to do, as long as they take 5 minutes a year and rub their crystal. So, you know, if you are a practicing, whether it's practicing Muslim, practicing uh, Jew, practicing Christian, there's a lot of work that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
To really embrace that, to really be that, there's a lot of work. It's the same as if you're an athlete.
Sure.
If you want to be the best athlete that you can be, then you have to work hard at that in order to be successful. And even if you want to become maybe you want to become the next astronaut, for crying out loud. You want to become an astronaut and you want to have a chance to go to Mars, for example, and then within the next 20, 30 years, or whatever time frame it is, then there's a lot of hard work that has to be done to put yourself in a position to be one of those top people that could potentially go to Mars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you're calling, there's still a lot of discipline that you have to instill upon yourself in order to be good at that thing. And I don't see a lot of self-discipline. I don't see a lot of temperance happening in the world. I see a lot of people who are willing to just live in the moment. There are a lot of, there are, quite frankly, I'm going to pick on guys again. There are a lot of men who literally want to live in the moment. They want to drink another beer. They want to bang another chick. They want to spend their latest paycheck because, well, they just want to live in the moment. They're thinking completely, entirely of themselves. They're entirely narcissistic.
Well, and that's instinctual almost. And back to your point about that time where we're at the peak of our sexuality, and at any other creature out there and any other animal, that's the time for reproduction. And there is that. we as human beings, and we try to elevate ourselves above, outside of the gorilla kingdom. um Temperance or self-discipline is really, I guess, trying to stave the tide back on controlling those instincts, or that instinctual impulse, with rational thought and governance. And I think that's something where we aren't taught anymore to actually control our own behavior, and we aren't taught to actually internalize and look at why we feel a certain way about anything, versus just, well, if you feel it, then it must be right, so go tell everyone about it. And you flip this around. I mean, we say, well, if you feel it and if you think it and you believe it, you have a right to say it, right? That's kind of the standard credo for everyone out there. Well, if I really felt that there were only two sexes, and if you, I don't care what you self-identify as, and if you're a dude, you're a dude, and you're a girl, and everybody, then that's it, and shut the heck up, and that's all there is to it. If I actually grabbed a megaphone and went marching down the street just because that's what I feel, well, everybody would, that's deplorable. Everybody would say so. You know, granted, there might be a handful of people going, yeah, dude, it's about time somebody did that. But that's not an exercise of self-discipline either.
No, it's not an exercise in self-discipline. And I understand the whole point of trying to go against the wiring that is the animal within us. And that's the whole point. That is why you do that self-discipline.
Right.
Because every time you go out there and you make a decision, whether, if you're a young man who's like, you know what, I'm just going to have some more beer with my buddies, or, you know what, I'm just going to bang that next chick because that's what I want. Almost every single one of those scenarios, you're involving another human being in the process. You're involving somebody, and you might think, well, I'm just having another beer. How am I involving somebody else? Well, because you're potentially, you have somebody at home who's waiting for you.
Or you're getting behind the wheel of a car.
Or worse,
And-
you're getting
yeah.
behind the wheel of a car.
Mhm.
And so every time we make these terrible decisions, every time there's an opportunity for self-discipline, we should be thinking about the fact that, our decisions impact other people. And even if you do something that causes self-harm, there are people who care about you, and and what are you doing to them now that you've destroyed your life in the process? I'm not talking about accidents. Accidents happen, but I'm talking about people who willingly make narcissistic decisions. Because let's face it, when we're talking about self-discipline, we're really talking about becoming not narcissists, right? I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to curb those appetites, those sexual appetites, those appetites for the cookies and the beer and the alcohol, whatever they may be. We're trying to curb those appetites. We have to understand that there are people on the other end of those decisions. There are people around us that we interact with. There are people that we can, for example, there are women who get raped, and there are women who get raped by men who just want to go out there and bang another chick, and they're looking at what's just in it for them. They're not practicing self-discipline. We need more self-discipline in our society. We need to stop normalizing this concept of just doing anything and everything that you want and be damned.
Yep. Well, and something that I asked you early on is, we have a severe lack of self-discipline, and I believe that's because we don't have any responsibility for the consequences of the actions in that they may have. So you talk about all these other people who could be adversely affected by selfish behavior.
Yeah.
I don't believe that most of the people out there have any concept of other people anymore. And I guess back to my question, why? Why do I need self-discipline? there are no consequences and no personal responsibility. I'm not held accountable for any of that anymore. Unless I actually kill or rape somebody.
Right, right, right. Well, there are a lot of benefits from developing, or at least I believe there are a lot of benefits for developing a personal self-discipline. I mean, um, simplifying one's life, for starters. When you simplify your life down, you remove a lot of stressors from your life. There's a lot of there are less things to worry about. You have men, for example, who go out and they want to go have some more beer with their friends, and they go out and drink, and they go drinking. Well, if they maintain self-discipline, now they have more money in their bank account. They're not drinking it all the way. They don't have to worry about, what are they going to tell their wives or their girlfriends when they get home? They don't have to worry about lying to their kids about their behavior, for example. They don't have to worry about, am I going to lose my job because I overslept for the 20th time and I'm running late to work the next day because I'm hungover. They don't have to worry about getting pulled over for a DUI. When you practice self-discipline, there are a lot of things that stem from that moment of, no, I'm not going to do that right now. When you make that decision, and let's face it, a lot of what we say is self-discipline is really involving doing the right thing now and not waiting to do the right thing. Whether the right thing might be, going to practice because you're an athlete, or maybe the right thing is simply, I'm not going to drink today. I'm going to have one beer. There's nothing, I think a lot of people can say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with having one beer. There's probably a lot of wrong if you're going to have one bottle of vodka, right? There's a lot of difference there, right? But when you practice that self-discipline, you simplify your life. You're making better decisions. So you're reducing a lot of the stress that's in your life in the process of doing that. You're eliminating a lot of that worry, and it can become that never-ending cycle, right? When you're making bad decisions, which lead to that worry, which leads you to make worse decisions, which leads to extra worry. So I think there's a lot of benefit from self-discipline.
Well, and I see a lot of this actually in work applications. I mean, I know everybody is always busy. Everybody, I don't know one person who works who feels like they don't have enough to do.
Right.
But there's always those tasks, whether it's a report that you have to write, whether it's something that's due for someone else, or just a task you don't want to do. You always put that off and you say, well, I'll get to that when I can, or whatever. And what inevitably happens almost every time, just about the time where you don't have any more time to put it off and you sit down to start doing it, something else inevitably comes up and you don't get to it. Or you're cramming and you're trying to do 2 or 3 things at once. Where if when you had that report that was due, that task that you didn't want to get done, or whatever it may be, come across your desk, you say, all right, I know I don't want to do it, but I need to accomplish this now and put my effort into it now, and actually get that done. You'll find that you're actually free of it and liberated from that a heck of a lot quicker, because it's over and you can put it behind you. Whereas if you continually procrastinate it, that can stay with you for, well, basically all the way up until the 11th hour. And it inadvertently affects all of your other functions that you're doing at your job. And for some people, if you're fortunate enough to leave work at work, but if you're like most, even the thought or the idea of having to get that done that you didn't want to will follow you home. And you'll end up either talking about it or thinking about it or bringing it back up. And then you're not paying attention to something your spouse was trying to tell you on. And like, you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. I was totally listening to you the whole time. So by actually disciplining yourself to be punctual in your job and your performance and your timeliness, I know that that might sound frivolous, but really when you can do that, it does allow you more attention and quality attention to the other things in your life that's not work as well. And that's very liberating.
Yeah. I'll use minimalism as an example, since I've been practicing that for a few years now. Um, I've talked about on the show previously that in the process of eliminating things from my life, that it's very psychologically freeing. That there's a big weight that lifts from your mind when you throw crap out, when you recognize it as crap and you get rid of it. There's also a sense of accomplishment of being able to do that, of saying I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff. But at the same time, that sense of liberation stays with you, because the fewer things that you possess, there's less worry about it. There's a Stoic philosophy, I guess, or Stoic action called premeditatio malorum. And I've mentioned this previously on the show before, and you looked at me like I was a crazy person for doing it. But premeditatio malorum is this practice that Stoics do, where they try to envision the very worst possible things ever happening in their lives as actually happening and how they would react to it. But there's a sense of freedom that comes from that. One, it helps you to be a little bit more self-disciplined, but it also helps you to prepare for those types of eventualities. Should they ever occur, you hope that they don't occur, but should they ever occur, you've at least practiced it in your mind of how you would react and how you would respond. But when you get rid of things, when you are practicing that self-discipline, that sense of thinking about how you would respond in certain things or how you would take care of things becomes much simpler to do. So, for example, if you chuck a lot of your belongings and you just don't have a lot of stuff around anymore, well, you quickly realize, well, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I don't have to think, well, I don't have to get stressed out. Well, what happens if my house catches on fire and burns to the ground? There are people that would be literally distraught if their house burnt to the ground. And for me, the only things that I care about are that the living entities get out alive. That's it. That's all I really care about. Anything else is replaceable. All the pictures, even the pictures that you see behind me, they're all digital. I can reprint them. So it doesn't matter. Even the computer that I'm recording on, everything that I have is in the cloud. I just buy a new computer and I'm good to go. I just connect it back to the cloud and I'm done. Right? Everything, there's nothing to worry about, or there's fewer things to actually worry about. And then when you practice that premeditatio malorum, you start realizing, oh, there's ways I can deal with it, easier to come by. So I think through that, but even premeditatio malorum, which is Latin, that activity of reflecting on what happens if my computer crashes, what happens if my dog were to die, what happens if my loved one were to die tomorrow, what would I do in those situations, how would I respond? You start to realize that in and of itself is a form of self-discipline. You have to face the maker, but you face the maker now so that you're prepared for it later. And that, even that type of self-discipline makes your world less stressful and much more manageable. And you start realizing, I can actually manage it. I actually know what I'm going to do in certain situations, and I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, I'm probably not going to do that quite yet, at least not me. But I know for me, I am practicing on I'm not going to be the best at scheduling my time. That is going to be a constant struggle for me until the day I die. I'll probably have my own death on the calendar and miss it by a day or two. I just know I will. I'm terrible with that. But I know where one of my shortcomings is I'm emotionally reactive. And I recognize that about myself. So that's something I'm always trying to be more self-conscious of. I don't think that I'm ever going to change that completely, but at least being more aware of it allows me an opportunity to practice self-discipline quite a bit. And I look at when I hear something I really don't like, it's easy for people to get angry and upset and vocalize that frustration and anger. And anger and rage is not in any way controlling yourself. Actually, that's demonstrating that you have lost control and given it up to someone else or something else. And I don't like relinquishing freedom ever. So I don't like opportunities where I'm emotionally driven to anger by other people or other situations, because that's an overwhelming sense of weakness and vulnerability for me. So I'm constantly working on that. And that happens, I mean, every day. There's some sort of frustration, whether it's at work or at home, and really trying to reel in that knee-jerk reaction allows me to govern my own instinct and refocus how I want to approach that, based on what I want to be in the situation. So, as a coworker at work or an employee at work, how do I want to be perceived? Do I want to be open to new situations and be approachable and somebody that can work within a team, even when the situation is stressful or maybe not ideal? That's how I want to be. So that's where I need to curtail that there. At home, it's very different. I don't want my kids to be around an angry father who just gets, freaked out at the drop of a hat. And I don't want to lose my mind over spilled milk and food on the floor. Um, and those are areas where I have to work on my own self-governance. But when you look at your TikTok ladies, I don't see any of them actually demonstrating any sense of self-control when they're literally screaming at a phone that they're recording themselves on. And over what? So I think there's opportunity for everyone out there to exhibit a little bit of self-discipline. And I think by doing that, that actually helps the individual develop and our society ultimately develop together.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, I think we carried this one on long enough.
All right.
It was a fun one. I
Yep.
liked it.
It was good.
Yeah. So you can catch you can catch all of our stuff off of our website at fusionunderground.net. We're on Twitter at the FU Brothers, YouTube, wherever you get your audio feeds. You can find us Fusion Underground. We come up. So yeah. So a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think there was some opportunity for there's some other things to be discussed, or maybe we got a little sidetracked or kind of went off and missed a point. So I personally invite everyone out there, if there was something that you thought we were right on the cusp of hitting a big aha moment, or as an apostrophe, I will say, to quote Smee from Hook, we hit an apostrophe moment out there. Shoot me an email. Let me know.
Yeah. Fusion Underground, or contact at fusionunderground.net. For Jason Moret, I'm Manuel Ramirez. You've been listening to the Fusion Underground.
Have a good night. Almost.
My goodness.
Yep. Almost made it.
And then realized it was still on the sharing the partial screen.
Yeah, you might want to stop recording.
Oh, I can't even find the button now. It's just great.